So at first I thought I blew my tire. So I'm like, sealant, CO2, maybe I can get this
You
going
didn't
home.
realize at that point the damage that was done.
Not until I was off the bike and then I looked and I saw my room. So I look at my cycling computer. I go, at about 3.5 miles to go, gotta run it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dirty Chain Podcast, brought to you by Michigan Midpack Media, the podcast that covers the Michigan cycling scene from the viewpoint of the Midpacker. I'm your host, Trevor.
And Sheldon is back in Michigan.
Yes, he's back, ladies and gentlemen, and, mostly in one piece.
I'm in better shape than the bike. We'll just leave it at that.
Well, fresh off of his Lake City Alpine race in Lake City, Colorado, Sheldon is back here to discuss and talk to us about let's face it, the trouble he got into during that race.
Can we say bad decision rides?
Well, yeah.
But this was the greatest bad decision because I am so excited to go back next year.
Well, that's great. Before we talk about that, is there anything we should discuss? I mean,
I have to ask you. How's your week been in the Midpack?
Well,
because I haven't been around. I don't know what's going on right now. I feel like I just walked into like a parallel universe.
You have been gone for quite a few days. My week's been fine. I mean, listen, no one wants to hear about my two mildly fast, mostly slow road rides. So why don't we just get right into the story at hand?
All right. So yeah, on Thursday, the 22nd, I left Michigan and I left my house about 4 o'clock in the morning to head down to Detroit, and I flew out to Denver. Landed in Denver, got my rental van for the week, and I headed straight to a Taco Bell parking lot to put my bike together.
Oh, well, how did you transport your bike?
Oh, this very fine fellow let me borrow this spectacular bike transportation bag.
Oh, who's that?
I think his name's Trevor Gibney.
Well, there we go. Yeah. You're welcome, by the way.
That bag was spectacular. It worked really, really well.
Good.
Bike made it there all safely in one piece.
Did it make it back in one piece?
We'll get to that. Anyone that's on Instagram knows that answer. And it was not from transportation. So yeah, I put my bike together in the parking lot of a Taco Bell while enjoying some spectacular Nacho Bel Grande pre-ride fuel.
Of course you did. So that's just number one of the bad decision list on the bad decision list.
I think this day, Thursday, just kind of took the cake for everything. So after I got my bike put together, I immediately headed out west on Interstate 70 into Summit County. And when I got past the small town of Georgetown, which has a parking area that I used to sleep in my younger days when I would be
dirt bagging it or whatever.
Dirt bagging it in Colorado.
Yeah.
I was a snowboard bum when I used to live in Colorado, so I used to.
So you're familiar with the
general area.
The general area. Okay.
So Georgetown, I pulled off, parked in said parking lot that I used to sleep in. And got my bike out and started heading out on some what appeared to be gravel roads. Very quickly turned out to not be gravel roads and was a Jeep trail. And
did you pick these roads specific because they're part of the race, or you just saw some roads and went for it?
I was just very eager to get out on my bike out in Colorado.
Makes sense.
So I was still hours away from Lake City at this point. This is Georgetown is probably about an hour and a half or so from Denver.
And what is the elevation at that point?
About 8,500 feet.
And how long did it take you for that elevation to just slap you across the face.
Pretty. I just kind of had a burn in the lungs. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely wasn't feeling spectacular, but then some thunderstorms started to roll in while I was up on this Jeep trail, so I had to zip back down, get to my car, and I was like, well, I guess I'll keep the travels going. And that's when I headed out to Leadville, which was part of my plan to stay there for the night. It's a little over 10,000 feet of elevation. It's the highest town in the continental United States. So I got there, did a few rides out there, very short rides. One of the roads I went down tapered off to a 2-track that eventually just tapered off into forest.
Same day, or is this another
same day? Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So this was after the thunderstorms had ended. So this is still Thursday. So then I ended up going into Leadville and drove past Floyd's headquarters there.
Nice.
Took a picture that's on the Instagram.
Yeah.
Put my bike up and started to look at what I would be doing for dinner, and I ended up in a very local establishment dive bar.
Yeah.
And made more bad decisions. Turns out it only takes about 1 pint of beer to get drunk at elevation when you're not used to it.
How many beers did you have? Did you lose count?
I had 4 and made it back to my van, slept in. I did a lot of van camping on this trip. And the next day I woke up with a very strong mix of hangover and elevation sickness.
You think it was like 60-40? What kind of mix are we talking?
I think it was a good clean cut 50-50.
I doubt it. I think you were just really hungover.
I was really hungover.
All right, so you're in Leadville, and it's Friday.
Yep.
And you're kind of high. You checked in with us on the last episode on Friday.
Yeah, I when I did my recording, I was probably 40 miles outside of Leadville. After I left Leadville, you and I had been talking, and I was trying to get good enough service to do a recording and send it. So once I had a good signal, I pulled off into they have areas out in Colorado to put chains on your tires. So I was actually in a tire chaining area doing my recordings.
Okay, cool. So Friday, did you stay in Leadville, or?
I stayed in Leadville till about noon.
Okay.
And then after that's when I completed the rest of the drive to Lake City.
So you get in Lake City Friday afternoon, evening.
Yeah, about 4:00.
Okay.
But the drive to Lake City, so once you hit Gunnison, you take 149 south, and that drive I think was probably one of the prettiest roads I've ever driven on. I mean, it follows a river. You're just cutting through gorges. It's just 2-lane pretty much the entire time. And this is where you enter the San Juan Mountains. And it was... I have a lot of pictures up on Instagram. It was the prettiest drive I think I've ever done inside the continental United States.
I mean, I'm imagining that at this point that your stoke level for the race is pretty high.
Through
right?
the roof. Yeah. At this point, my elevation sickness / hangover is gone.
Yeah.
I'm driving down this beautiful highway through the San Juan Mountains, and I know I'm getting closer to my final destination. And the weather was beautiful, and I was actually on my scheduled time to arrive there. And yeah, I was so stoked to get to Lake City.
So you get to Lake City, was there like a little bit of like a party at the beginning, or any sort of, how did you get your information?
So we met at a store so Lake City's a very small town. It's mostly like a summer vacation town. Beautiful old, very Western style buildings, and it sits in this valley. And so we went to the store that we had in our emails where to pick everything up at, and I figured out pretty quick where it was because it was the store with all the bikes all around it.
Sure.
And so I parked my van and I walked inside, kind of deer in the headlights, knew nobody in the entire building. The only person I had been in contact with for the last few months was Michael Fleischman. He's a race organizer. He and his brother-in-law and their wives, plus some other family members, essentially put this entire event on.
This is the first year that it's...
First year, it's their first event they've organized. So I walk in, and Michael's name's the only person I even know. I don't have a face to put to it. So I just turned to somebody. I was like, "Are you Michael?" And they were like, "No." But they pointed me in the right direction, and we were able to go over and finally meet after, I don't know, 5-6 months of being in communication via Instagram.
Cool. So, can we get to race day?
You want to get to race day?
I want to get to race day.
All right, let's talk race day.
So I want to... So Saturday morning is when the race went
7
on.
a.m.
So I was going through Instagram. I saw on Lake City's official Instagram page or account that there was a post of a video of the rollout, the beginning of the race, and I'm looking, and every single bike I see is either a full suspension mountain bike or a traditional mountain bike, and all I'm thinking is, oh, Sheldon is screwed.
So we had very similar thought processes that morning.
So, well, first tell us what type of bike you brought to this race.
So I took a cyclocross bike with the fattest tires I could fit on it, which are
38s.
38s.
Yeah.
So it's a Cannondale Cadex with an Ultegra group set. And I left a Midwest cassette on it. I probably could have gone with a few teeth larger in my rear.
Sure.
But I did take it out. This is kind of jumping back. I did do a pre-ride of the end of the course the day I got there. So after I got my packet from the packet pickup, I got out my bike. I never even changed into a kit. I was in shorts and a t-shirt, threw my shoes on, and I started up Engineer Pass, which is actually the end of the race. But it starts heading up this valley, decently steep roads. And for the first few miles, it was very Midwest gravel. And I was like, this is going to be pretty sweet. I got about 4 or 5 miles up the road, and very quickly the road was changing into not Midwest gravel.
What do you mean by not Midwest gravel? Like what?
So
what in your mind?
Midwest gravel is just that stereotypical dirt road with loose.
Hey, listen, I know what Midwest gravel is. I want to know what it is not.
So what it is not is imagine very sharp rocks that are quite large embedded into a concrete-like gravel road.
Okay.
And then around that is very loose, also sharp rocks that are hand size. And this is what we're going to be riding on.
Okay.
And I mean, and what's sticking out of the ground, some of them are 3 inches up and very sharp.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
And that's this area. They had at the end of the race, we actually coined it Alpine Gravel. And that's what the term they're going to use for future years, so not to confuse people. And on the website, it's going to be showing up in parentheses, and it's going to say, ask what Alpine Gravel is.
Good point.
Because this was not a gravel course.
Okay, so race morning.
Surrounded by mountain bikes.
Well, actually, back up for a second. At what point did you realize that you brought a knife to a gunfight?
Well, when I first met Michael, I guess the night before, he and his family had been just talking about things, and I had came up in about the 650-mile week, and he showed the picture of me camping in Leadville to his wife, and his wife's response was, he's going to ride those tires here?
Oh, jeez.
And they brought this up to me when I got there, and already I'm like, yeah, that's what I have.
It's the only bike I brought.
So that's when I went up into the mountains, and that's when I started to realize it's going to be a difficult day.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no doubts in being able to get through it, but I very quickly realized this is going to be a hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be a hard race regardless of what bike you bring, but I knew this is going to be some squirrely handling. I'm going to have to go real easy at points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to come to your defense a little bit because I think it's easy to say, oh, this is a race in Colorado. Why in the world would he be riding a gravel bike? But, I mean, the website says it's a gravel race, essentially. I mean, it did say there was some single track. I did see that.
Yep, and the single track's right off the get-go, and it is very loose, sharp, small pieces of shale in a pine forest, and it is extremely off-camber.
Oh, wow.
But it was awesome.
Okay.
Like, I honestly, that was kind of one of my favorite parts of the race was riding my gravel bike through this super technical single track that's going uphill. Like, we're not going downhill, so this is uphill single track, off-camber. And it was, I mean, I've taken mountain bikes out into Yankee Springs. This was completely different. Like, this was, it was one of the first times that I've been able to ride a bike in a situation that was completely foreign to me.
That's awesome. Well, so you look on the website, it says gravel race, and it says with some single track. But just the week before, the Lake City Alpine was the Steamboat Gravel.
Yes.
Which was like a huge gravel race. A lot of pros were there, and I realize Colorado's a big state, but as I understand it, that race was fast, really smooth gravel roads, and everyone was riding basically they were riding
35s.
Yeah, 35s.
Most were on 35s.
And so this race to me, the one that you did, seems more of like a Leadville type mountain bike race than say a gravel, just a gravel race.
A little bit, yeah. So for anybody that which I highly encourage, I think this is a race that everybody should check out. But I would say no tires smaller than 2-inch, and you're probably gonna want suspension of some sort.
Yeah.
At least in your fork.
I mean, I think that's the kind of the beauty of gravel, right? It's it kind of encompasses.
It's broad.
So many different types of terrain.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the even growing appeals to gravel is it tests you in so many different ways. Because, I mean, in other races we've done this year, I mean, you think about Barrier Bay, you hit Sager Road, suddenly your bike that was flying on the hard pack, not so fast anymore. You're hitting sand.
Right.
Land Run 100, every 5 miles you're wishing you had a different bike.
Uh-huh.
But then the next mile, your bike's perfect.
Yeah.
And that is what is so great about gravel is, and it's kind of the thrill. You go in, especially if it's somewhere you've never been, it's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sport.
That is a classic thing for a lot of gravel races. At a different time in the race, you wish you had a different bike, or you have the right bike some part of the race, and then you have the wrong bike the other.
Yep. Or your tire choice is going to be wrong at some point in this race.
Point, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, though, for the Lake City Alpine 50, your bike was 100% wrong the entire time.
I had like a 15-mile or 10-mile stretch at the very beginning. So we come out of the single track, and you come back onto these, what I would call Midwest gravel roads. And it's along this lake. It's still pretty cool. When we started, it was barely 50 degrees. I think it was like 49 degrees when we started. So I had arm warmers and everything on. But, yeah, we came out of the single track. We start to enter back into the national forest there. And, yeah, it's this just beautiful, smooth, rolling gravel that is just very Midwest gravel.
And how long did that last?
About 10 miles.
Okay. Well,
I would say
a decent
it was
decent amount.
It wasn't short. But But we were starting to get some elevation. It wasn't steep, but it was climbing pretty much the entire time. And I kind of saw it in my heart rate. So I started to rein back a little bit, and I'm very glad I did. Because at the end of that, you come to Cinnamon Pass. In Cinnamon Pass, when you hit that sign, it is just up. It is Jeep trail with loose giant rocks, and it is never ending.
Oh, man.
And I am so glad I started to kind of calm my heart down when I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because if I had hit that at a high heart rate, I would have completely fallen apart. I mean, it was... You hit that, and you just start looking at it, and you're just... I have to go up that. And you can already see, like... There were guys with, like, 50, 52 tooth rear cogs. And there were parts where you're walking right there with them. I mean... There was a lot of hike-a-bike in this race.
That was my next question. How often was that a necessity?
So there was a beginning part of Cinnamon Pass that there was some hike-a-bike, and then we could ride for quite a while. But then when we started to get up towards... We're in the 12,000 foot range in Cinnamon Pass, and it turned into a section that there was some more hike-a-bike. Getting towards... what was our... second checkpoint? Yeah, our second checkpoint was at the very top of the pass, and that was like 12,300 feet.
Okay.
A lot of snow still up there.
Really?
In like thick spots. Like it wasn't snow everywhere.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, where there was snow, it was not small amounts. And this part of the race, coming down from Cinnamon Pass, was hands down the most nervous I've been on a bike. It's extremely steep. It's pure ruts and loose rocks, and it's very easy to... If you let go of your brakes, you're instantly too fast.
So, it may have been this moment, but was there a moment that you went into the race with a high stoke level, and then was there a point where you're like... I don't know if you felt that you were in over your head at all, but did you think maybe this was not the best choice?
There was never a point in this race that I felt that I was out of my skill level. There was a lot of points where I knew I was over my head with the bike that I was,
right. And that
was with.
Then,
yeah. So there were a lot of points where I was like questioning, am I pushing myself on the type of bike too much now? I had a lot of those moments where I'm like
in terms of
just
safety.
Sheer safety. Because I mean, I was rigid. I wasn't running really high pressure, but I was at like 35 psi on my 38s, so I was getting banged around pretty hard. And coming down a lot of the descents, like, you have to be on your brakes the whole time.
Yeah.
And you're leaning back because it'd be very easy. Like, you hit one rock, you're ending over. And there's no guardrails in these passes. Some of the passes, you look over the edge, it's 300 feet.
Jeez.
And, I mean, there's no trees, brush. It's just rocks, ledge. That's it. So, yeah, I had hand cramps going down a lot of the descents because you're just on your brakes the whole time. I ended up ruining my bar tape.
Just because you're gripping so hard.
Just gripping, moving around a lot. And then, like, so you come down Cinnamon Pass, and you get to this fork in the road, and that fork in the road there were quads going up it, and they were on 3 wheels going up this area that we're coming down. Just to give an idea of how rough this road and rocky it is. So you get to this fork, and you turn right, and now you're turning to head up to Engineers Pass, which is the steepest part of the highest point of the race. It's 12,800 feet.
Okay, so what mile is this? Do you?
This is about 26.
Okay, and you might have to look this up, but do you know at this point how much you've climbed already? What elevation you've already climbed?
Oh, I would have to look that up, but I would say...
What was the total?
62.
62. Yeah. So, I mean, you've probably already done half of that, maybe?
Oh, yeah, we're over 3.
Okay.
Because, I mean, coming down Cinnamon, like, you don't go all the way back down and then come up.
But just total elevation.
Yeah, I would say we're probably in the 32,
So,
3300
so you've
range.
already been climbing a ton.
A ton.
And,
I mean,
and then now you...
and the air's getting thin.
Yep.
I mean, at this point, you know,
How are your lungs doing at this point?
oh, I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was breathing hard. What was interesting was I had more lung issues than I did muscle.
Okay.
Like there were muscle aches, but they weren't like that. That you know, some of the 100-milers where you're cooking through and you just kind of have that muscle fatigue.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. This was just more. My heart's pounding, my breathing's heavy, but my legs actually felt pretty good.
Yeah, I would think that. I mean, other muscles would, like your back and your shoulders. And
My shoulders were killing me. Yeah. So yeah, we came to the very bottom of the Cinnamon Pass, and then there's a fork. We went right for our course. Also, this course marked amazing. They did a great job of marking between orange paint on the ground, flags, tags. They just did a great. There was never a point where I was like, "Where do I go now?"
Good. I mean, I think that's probably one of the just one less thing you have to worry about on already like a stressful race.
You know, I've been to some first year races where like signs fall down
Sure.
or this. They kind of went even overboard with like nice big arrows on the ground. So yeah, we turn right. We start going up Engineer Pass, and going up Engineer Pass, it's all sorts of switchbacks, and as you're going up, you can see the switchbacks ahead of you because they're just basically above you. And the three of us are the three gentlemen that I'm with. Two gentlemen that I'm with.
Yeah.
There are three of us total on gravel bikes, and we look up, and we were talking about this amongst each other. We're like, they're only a couple 100 feet away from us, but that's a mile and a half of riding to get there. It's kind of defeating, and everybody's walking. Everybody that we can see that's on a bike right now is walking.
Oh my god!
And so,
what kind of grade do you think?
Oh, it was steep.
Yeah.
Some of the sections were, and I mean, it was loose, and where it wasn't loose, it had running water from the snow melting off. I mean, it was a very difficult course.
Wow.
So you get to the top of Engineer Pass, and that's where you're at 12,800 feet of elevation, and there was a photographer there. And as we came around the corner, the gust of wind was just it was borderline scary because it was so strong you felt like you could get pushed off the ledge.
Oh my gosh.
So we make the corner around Engineer to start our descent, and there's the third aid station is there, and we just rolled in real quick so they could read our numbers. Every checkpoint you had to stop so they could at least get your number.
Sure.
And then we started a descent that I have never ridden my brakes so hard in my life for so long. I bet I held my brake levers down for over a half hour straight.
So this was worse than the Cinnamon Pass descent.
So Cinnamon is shorter, but it's steeper and looser.
Okay.
This one, it enables you if you want to go faster because there's more straight and it's not as steep, but it's still extremely rough, and it's steep enough that if you let go of your brakes, boom, 40 miles an hour. And this is not an area, especially on a rigid bike, you want to be going that kind of speed. So you're riding your brakes, and you're sitting, your butt's so far over the seat, because if you even just try to sit on your saddle while holding your brakes, you're probably gonna endo.
At this point, are you done with the majority of the climbing, or is there another pass?
At this point, yeah, after Engineer Pass, climbing's done. At this point, it is all downhill.
And how many miles do you have left?
So down Engineer Pass, it's probably about 17 miles.
Okay, so you still got quite a bit.
Oh yeah, and you're thinking the whole time while you're climbing, you're like, I just can't wait to descend. The descent was way more exhausting than the climbing.
Oh man.
Because you can't sit down. There were points where we'd get some like level areas, and we would sit down, and all of a sudden you realize your feet are numb from you've been standing this entire time with your toes pushed in, and you're on your brakes the whole time. And as soon as you can actually release your brake hoods, like, you realize how much your hands hurt.
I just want to point out that somewhere there's a cyclist from Colorado listening to you right now, just laughing at
Oh
you.
yeah, they're like, you Flatlander.
Yeah. What a noob.
Oh, I am a total noob when it comes to mountain riding.
So yeah, I mean, as I would be as well. But okay, so pick it up from there. Where you're heading down Engineer Pass.
Yeah, we're heading down Engineer Pass, and one of the riders we were with broke off and took off a little bit ahead of us. So there was just two of us at this point, and we're going down, and we came up on him, and he had a mechanical of some sort. And I asked him, I was like, are you okay? Do you need anything? He goes, no, I've got CO2, I've got all my stuff, and just waves us through. So we start going. I stopped real quick because I wanted to check. I mean, we were getting banged up. Really. Yeah. I mean, going down this was just, all your thing is, I hope my frame holds up.
Yeah.
And I had a point where I actually stopped to check my tire pressure because I was like, this is just getting ridiculous for the speeds that we're going. So the other gentleman I was with, he keeps going. I hop back onto my bike after about a 30-second stop, and at this point I'm just solo. So we're maybe 7 miles to go, and this is the part that I had pre-rode the night before, so I had a pretty good idea. So at this point I remembered where rough spots were, and so I'm kind of just bobbing and weaving across the road.
You're also kind of in the home stretch, so you know.
I've got that feeling. Like, home stretch. We're going. Let's do this. I know where things smooth out. I know where to save my energy for. Just go. And so I get out of the really, really rough areas, and during this point, I had actually passed this white Jeep Wrangler that had been, because there's four-wheelers all over the place. Like, this is just off-road heaven. And so I pass them while the roads are pretty weaving still, and they're having to go pretty slow. And I'm going, finally hit the smooth stuff. And I'm like, I'm gold. And this is where I actually started pedaling again, started pushing. I was back in my saddle, and I was going 35. Jeep caught back up to me because at this point the road kind of widens a bit, and it's not as sharp of turns. And they pass me, and they're kicking up dust, but they're, I don't know, 100 feet ahead of me, so I can see the road decently well. But this is very white, loose dust. And I'm kind of tucked in, pedaling, home stretch. I am 3.5 miles from the finish line, and I didn't see it until it was directly under me. Big old rock sticking right out of the road, and I pulled my front up to try to hop. Front cleared it. My back smoked it at full speed, and there was no hiss. It was instant flat. Caved in the side of my rim. The tire actually was fine. Tire didn't have any damage done to it.
It was just your rim.
My rim just caved in on itself. And so
you survived all of the difficult
This was the smoothest part of the entire race.
Of course.
This was hands down the smoothest part of the race, and this is where I destroy a rim.
Yeah.
And so I lose my air instantly. There's no hiss, nothing. And my back end's fishtailing. I'm 35 miles an hour, and I'm just getting on the brakes, trying to... Now remember, this road has no guardrails. The right-hand side is about an 80-foot drop down to a creek, and it's essentially vertical. The other side is a sheer cliff wall. So it's kind of fishtail. I managed to stop about 10 feet from the right ledge to the cliff, and I had to kind of stop and just... I was shaking. Like, my hand... I had that full adrenaline, like... Get my breathing under control, get my hands under control, and...
But you didn't crash.
Didn't crash.
Good.
So at first I thought I blew my tire, so I'm like, sealant, CO2, maybe I can get this going.
You didn't realize at that point the damage that was done.
Not until I was off the bike, and then I looked and I saw my rim. So I look at my cycling computer, I go, at about 3.5 miles to go, gotta run it. And I just,
Was there even a question in your mind, or were you just like,
oh no, I
This
was
is happening.
not going to DNF this
Okay.
race. If I had to run 10 miles, I would have ran 10
I mean, you
miles.
probably were already walking or running other parts of the.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So-
But so at this point,
But you were finishing. You were determined.
oh yeah, I was not going to.
Yeah.
I was not going to DNF this race. So I start going, and I maybe made it a quarter mile before I had to do my first bit of walking. I was we're still about 9,000 feet of elevation at this point, and last time I ran anything was St. Patrick's Day 2018. That was the last time I had running shoes on. So now I'm in cycling shoes, pushing a bike, and I would run probably quarter mile to a half mile, and then I'd have to kind of do these walking breaks.
Yeah, sure.
And I had a couple riders go by me.
You're also running in high elevation. Which
High
is
elevation and cycling shoes.
Not, in
suck to
cycling
run.
shoes.
And so I finally get down to the bound, and it was awesome. Every rider, so I had 4 riders pass me.
That's it.
That's it.
Oh, that's.
I mean, I wasn't very far up in the group, but this was a true mid-pack finish for me. But yeah, I had 4 riders pass me. Every single one of them asked if I needed anything. I mean, everyone out there was fantastic. And I waved them through because, I mean, unless you got a spare rim. Nope. Once I hit the flat area where you go into the downtown, that's where I was like, now I just have to keep running. Doesn't matter how I feel. So I'm running, and I see the first cones that make a right-hand turn into downtown, and there's a volunteer there, and they've got a radio, and I can hear them saying my number, 23. And as I start to come around the corner, there's Michael, the race director, and he is just cheering.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, it was great. As I made that corner, he gave me a high five, ran a little bit, then I had to make a left, and there was a few more volunteers there, and then it's you run down the center of downtown. Or you should be riding. At this point, I'm running, and I ran into the finishing park, pushing my bike, and crossed that finish line, threw my bike to the side, and just collapsed on the ground. I think the run might have been harder than the ride.
That's now. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but it seems, and especially after this race, that you are developing quite a reputation for things just not going quite as planned.
2019's been rough.
And you posted something on Facebook or Instagram the other day of it was like your litany of things that broke. Will you find that and just read it off for me?
Absolutely. Oh, and the other great thing is at the end when Michael got back to the park, he just said that was the most Sheldon finish ever.
And he had just met you. How did he know you so well?
So he follows my Instagram,
Oh, yeah.
and he listens to the podcast. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, Sheldon, I'm glad that you're safe, and it's awesome that you finished. But I can't say I'm surprised at how the finish went.
I think I kind of cursed myself. Not that I actually truly believe in it, but when I was coming down, I was thinking a finish without an issue.
Oh my. Yeah, no, you definitely cursed yourself.
So let's see. The trashed items of 2019. 1 Garmin 520 cycling computer. 1 Zip 404 Firecrest wheel. 2 full kits. A Mado 2.0 wheel. An FSA K-Lite handlebars. A POC optical helmet. And then I said, am I forgetting something? And you reminded me of a few things.
I said, left side ribs 1 through 10.
Yes, there were some rib injuries earlier this year, too. Plus a lot of skin. So I think that's everything so far.
Okay, I just wanted to revisit that. All right, let's go back to the finish. So you're finished.
Cross the finish line. claps on the ground and just laid there for a minute and got up. One of our sponsors was Oscar Blues,
The beer?
the beer company.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, it was awesome. The owner's father was there, and they also brought. So the brewery also owns a bike company.
Oh.
Reeb Bikes, made in Colorado. Do you know what Reeb is backwards?
Oh, beer, I guess.
Yeah.
That's smart.
That's awesome. And there were a couple of their bikes there. All of them, I did get to ride one around the park post race. I really liked it. It was a pretty awesome bike.
What kind of?
It was so they had both mountain and gravel there.
Uh-huh.
This was a steel frame gravel with flared handlebars, and I think there were 2.2 tires on it. And it rode really nice.
Yeah.
It was the medium frame, and I was impressed by it.
Do you think it would have been a better choice?
Absolutely. Anything that could have fit 2.2s would have been a better choice. Yeah. But returning next year for the 2020 installment, I want suspension.
Oh.
Like, I'm not even going to... I've proven...
Wait, are you... Really? I mean... You're like the Mr. Bad Decisions himself. You're going to let this one race ruin you now? No more fording streams. No, you're just going to... Everything's going to be
I looked at a stream and I
up.
almost forded it just to piss you off here in Michigan. But it looked really cold.
Yeah, you probably would have died, too. No, you're right. That's probably the safer thing to do. I just won't look at you the same ever again.
Ah, damn it. But I really can't speak enough great things about both the group that organized this race and the race itself.
Yeah, so it was, like we said, it was the first year, and then you said it was a fairly small race. You said like 70 people?
Yeah, approximately 70.
Yeah, and kind of, I mean, literally almost like a mom and pop organization of putting it together.
Family and family in this town. I mean, Lake City, kind of pitched in. There were locals that were helping out.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was thinking about different races that you've done, and that some of our friends have done, like Sancho 200, which is, I think, kind of similar, you've said.
I got just kind of that same vibe, small group, the people that are there.
Like homegrown feel, right?
Very homegrown feel. Like, when it came to the organization and just the vibe that you got from it, Lake City definitely had that Sancho feel. It's funny because they were both vastly different. I mean, you couldn't have more opposite of the terrain, and
sure.
And one was 50 miles, one was 200, but one had 3 times the climbing in the 50 miles. But just in the people that show up to these smaller, like you said, homegrown races, it's the people that it doesn't matter how hard the race is, how bad the conditions get. They know what they're getting themselves into, and they're gonna find a way to have fun regardless. Mm-hmm. You get to some races, and if it's almost too ironed out, then you get the riders that, if everything doesn't go right, I didn't like this race. Let's complain about this. And
or sometimes you just don't finish and you don't.
Yeah, and we're like the smaller gravel events I enjoy because it's the people that are like, I'm going to finish this no matter what. Mm-hmm. And no matter how bad things go for me on course, I'm going to be across the finish line having a beer, smiling.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about these events. I mean, you just don't see that at everything.
I think that's the kind of opportunity that gravel gives to cycling in general.
You don't see it in road anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's
as much.
Yeah, it's just it's easier, I think, for these homegrown type races to have a place in the gravel spectrum instead of
absolutely. Gravel has a very broad spectrum.
I guess maybe mountain biking too. I guess I just don't know enough about that myself.
This definitely had more mountain bikers than I feel that were normal gravel cyclists.
Yeah, we keep calling it a gravel race, but I think we've established it's not.
Alpine Gravel. It's Alpine Gravel. So post-race, a bunch of us ended up lingering around until teardown, and we actually sat down with the organizers, and all of us kind of just hash out what did we like, what didn't like, what could be improved for next year, all the way down to how can they advertise it for next year. And they were bringing up maybe we should call it a mountain bike race, and three of us were there that rode on gravel bikes, and I think all three of us were the ones that were like, no, just be a little more specific.
Sure.
I mean, because we proved you can absolutely do this race
Yeah.
on a gravel bike. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Is it going to be the easiest? Are you going to be the fastest? No, but you can do it. But is it a mountain bike race? No, because
Not
if you say that,
necessarily.
then everybody shows up on a mountain bike race or on a mountain bike. Where I won't lie, if somebody said next year for you to do it, you have to do it on your gravel bike. Okay, I'll do it again on my gravel bike. Like I'll do it on a mountain bike now that I've experienced it.
Right.
And I just want to do a faster time. But if someone said to do it, you have to ride a gravel bike, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
So there weren't a lot of people there, about 70-ish. Do you know, were there many people out of the state, or were you one of the only?
I was there was.
My guess is there weren't many people from Michigan there.
No, there were 4 of us that I know of that were from out of state.
Only 4?
Only 4.
Okay.
And one I don't think really counts. So he had registered as a Michigan, but he's been in Denver for a year and a half.
Yeah, no.
So that one didn't really count. He and I did ride together quite a bit towards the beginning of the race. There was a gentleman from Kansas, and he and I rode for a little bit, and we were just kind of laughing at ourselves like, what are we doing here? And then there was a gentleman from Texas who was from the Amarillo area of Texas.
Okay.
And I think that was about it.
So yeah,
There might have been others, but that's all I know of.
So it's kind of definitely a
Oh yeah.
locals race.
Yeah.
Probably people that have
Knew the area.
ridden the roads before.
Probably just looked at us like,
Yep.
what are these guys doing?
So what's the deal? Are you gonna go back? Or are you gonna?
I will be back 100%.
Yeah?
I had an absolute blast. There's a lot of this race that, unless you've ridden it, it's just hard to explain. I mean, it's one of those things like there's going to be that camaraderie amongst the racers from it that you just can't explain to other people. Being up that high, the views. I mean, you can take a picture, it just doesn't capture that moment. So when people are asking certain aspects of the race, I'm just like,
Got to experience
you
it.
got to go out next year. You got to go out and experience it, because whatever I say isn't going to do it justice.
Sure.
And I hope the course stays the same. The course, I thought the course was just amazing. The only thing that we had talked about at post race was, before entering the single track in the forest, maybe tacking on a mile or two outside, like through the town, just to kind of give an opportunity to splinter things up. Because we kind of got to the forest, I think, within a mile, and we were really still pretty tight. And
Sure.
So at 7 a.m., even though the sun's coming up, when you're in a valley,
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, when we entered the forest, it was borderline dusk, or like, that dawn feeling, even though like 7 o'clock here would have been bright. And
Yeah.
so I think that'd probably be the only thing, would just be figure out a way to add something to kind of shatter the group a little.
But regardless of the issues you had, you're still all in next year.
100%.
Maybe
just
like
with
you
a
said,
different bike.
Different bike, yep.
That would be it.
I mean, it gives you an excuse to get a new bike. I mean,
Yeah.
so is your rear wheel fixable, or what's the deal with that?
No, aluminum. Some people say you can bend it back. Aluminum cracks really easily, especially once it's been damaged. So, it wasn't a super expensive aluminum rim. So I actually donated my entire rear wheel, tire, cassette, skewer,
It's a brand new tire.
I know. I had like 60 miles on it. I donated it to the race organizers, and they are gonna figure out a way to turn it into a form of trophy for next year.
Fantastic.
They were about. I mean, they're gonna decide this over the winter, but one idea was maybe to laser etch the men's and women's winners' names each year on the rim.
Oh, that'd be cool. Well, regardless of how they figure it out, it's like a piece of you will be with the race.
I mean, now I have to go back. Part of my bike's there. But yeah, it's an event that I highly encourage riders to look into for next year, because the town that it's at, if you want to do a racecation, this is it. I mean, it's the most peaceful little town out in the middle of the San Juan mountain range. And it's a race that so far I haven't seen anything that's kind of comparable to, especially for anybody from the Midwest. If you're a Midwest rider and you really want to test yourself, this is one.
Yeah, terrain-wise.
Elevation.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to get caught off guard. I was. I mean, there was a lot of times where it was just a fall back on your training.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
No, I kind of think that brings up a good point, though. Even though it's not a big race or it's only the first year of the race, I think to encourage people to look outside of their comfort zone, maybe outside of their state, outside of where they would normally ride, and seek out some of these races, because they're probably going to find exactly what you found, which was a group of people that are out there to have fun, to support the race, and to make that race just a blast to ride, and then also have an amazing adventure at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you shouldn't look at every race of, this is going to be my strong suit race, this is why I should do this. I mean, look at the ones that you don't know. Look at, I went out to this race. I didn't even know the race organizers, what his face even looked like until I got there. And now, since I've been home, I think 6 or 7 just of the riders, now we follow each other on, various forms of social media, and all we do is talk about, like, I can't wait for next year.
Yeah.
Finish the ride, have a beer again. That was awesome.
And of course, we here at the Dirty Chain podcast, we focus mainly on Michigan and talking about Michigan rides and races and events. But then also, I love that we have these opportunities to talk about when Michigan people get to go and experience races outside of the state.
Oh, so I met a gentleman there, raced with him. He now resides in Colorado, but he used to live in Michigan, and he rode Iceman.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I think he said, like, the last time he rode it was, like, 2009 or 2012 or something like that. But, yeah, we were able to sit there, drink beers, talked about about what I was riding this year, and he had gone out there with a friend, or he was racing with a friend, and then they were even talking about, like, we need to go back and race Iceman sometime.
That's awesome.
So these little things, like, yeah, you travel halfway across the country, meet a complete stranger, and you can automatically have this connection.
Yeah.
So
that's so great. Sheldon, you feel good? You think we covered everything that...
Oh, I mean...
Are you sore? Or how's your recovery coming from this
It's been going
adventure?
well. I've been off the bike. I just got in 2 days ago. Gonna go out and ride Thursday gravel tomorrow night.
Good.
With the group. The only sore spot is I did have a tumble.
It's your heart. It broke your heart from having to leave Colorado.
Oh, dude, yeah. I did not want to leave. That was hard leaving that state. I do adore Colorado. I used to live out there. Came home to a nice, cold, rainy Detroit. It was miserable when I landed, and then I had 3 hours of sleep before I had to head to work the next morning.
Jeez.
But
yeah. But yeah, the only sore. You said
Only sore spots, yeah, my tumble from on Cinnamon. I scratched up my side a little
Okay.
on a. It wasn't a bad crash. I
All right.
just had some ground slide out under me.
Hey, I am super proud of you for going out there and finishing and not truly hurting yourself.
Embarrassing the state of Michigan.
But I am glad that you didn't decide to stay out there forever and came back to us. So
It'd be hard doing the Michigan-Colorado Midpack. It just doesn't come off the tongue
Yeah,
the same.
So yeah, I think that's a great way to finish it here. Go find an adventure. Be a more safe version of Sheldon, and find an adventure.
Be me, but just taper it back a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, well, whether it's in your home state of Michigan, or out in Colorado, or any other state or country, keep your chains clean.
But get your chains dirty.
See you in the Midpack.